Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this morning. This is Rebecca Miller. I work with Colleen McAleer at Clallam County EDC, and we are honored to have our County Assessor, Pam Rushton, on the call with us this morning. And I'm going to let Pam take over from here. And Pam, let me just ask, would you like to make a presentation first or just take questions as they come up or wait until the end?
Well, there's a couple of things I was going to mention, and then we can take some questions if that's good.
Perfect. Absolutely.
Okay. All righty. Well, thank you guys for having me this morning. And let me know if you can't hear me, because I did have to go to the phone instead of the Zoom meeting. Okay, so let me know if you can't hear me.
You're all good.
Okay, I was going to address some of the things that Lori had mentioned in her email to me about, most people probably know they got their notices of value in the last week. We sent out about 50,000 notices. So if you haven't gotten one yet, get a hold of our office because there may be something wrong with your mailing address. So those went out on the 16th from our mailing company, so you should have them by now. So if you don't have them or you're getting calls because people are haven't received them but they know they should be there, let me know. So that was one of the things that she wanted me to address, because when we talked earlier in the year, I didn't know exact date when we were going to send them out. In our newest valuation, we still raised values for the most part, about 7.5% this year, not near as drastically as we did last year. We are seeing in the marketplace that sales have slowed down a little bit, but the prices have not started to come down much yet. So we're seeing that with the closed sales. I know one of the things that people question a lot is that the interest rates. I think that's affecting the amount of sales that are happening. People are not as, they're not bidding on homes anymore, and they're probably not as qualified as they were when the interest rates were down around 2. I think they're up around 7 now. So they are affecting the market somewhat, but we're not seeing the sales prices come down all that much. So people still want to move here. We still don't have the supply that some areas have, so that's always going to affect the sales prices. Most people probably that I'm talking to know how to file a Board of Equalization if you think there's something wrong with your value, too high, too low, there's incorrect information. Come in and talk to us first. If there's incorrect information, those are pretty easy fix. Make sure you look at your statement, and you can go online and look at the information too. That was another thing I wanted to mention, that if you go online, as of today, we still have the online information defaulting to the current tax year, which is 22's values for 23's taxes. And the reason we leave it like that is second half taxes are due right now. And it gets very confusing because on our website, they give you an estimate of next year's taxes based off of this year's value. And it's confusing, and people end up paying the wrong amount of taxes because the wrong levy rate's being attached to the new value. It's an estimator, but most people don't know that. So I leave the default year onto the current tax year until after second half taxes are paid. So there is a drop down in the years that you can look at, because like I said, it's a 22 for 23 default year. If you go to the 23 for 24, that has the most current information in there, but you do have to manually drop down on our website to see that information. So I just wanted to give you a heads up on that. A couple other things that she mentioned. There is another change coming through legislation this year that is affecting the senior exemption program. I sent information to all 3 newspapers and the radio. The radio is the only one that I saw anybody respond to that mentioned it, but I wanted to mention it here because you guys have a lot of friends and clients that may be eligible for the senior exemption program. Legislation last year changed the program to be updated every 3 years on income, and it used to be on a 5-year because we're using the median income of each county. So for years across the state, we had the same thresholds for income for everybody. So you compare like King County to Ferry County, median income is drastically different. So we legislated to change that to the median income of the county so it more fits the people that live in the county. So that was changed a few years ago, and this last year they changed it to up. That was at that time was changed every 5 years or looked at every 5 years. Last year they changed to be looked at every 3 years, and they also increased the percentage of the median income for seniors to qualify. So for the 2024 taxes, they'll be eligible up to $46,000 in income for the senior exemption program. There are 3 tiers to that, but the 46 is the upper limits, where it was 40 for quite some time. And so we have changed that going into the new year. That doesn't work on the past years. It was still 40 in the past years. So on those levels of that exemption, if you're between 40,000 and 46,000, you get a reduced levy rate based off of you're not paying to the excess levies, the school levies, either bonds or enhancements. You don't pay to those. Those are removed from the process. Part of the state assessed school bond levy is also removed. So that's what you get at that level. There's the next level is between 33,000 and 40,000. You get those same things removed, plus you get a portion of your value removed for tax purposes. And then the next one is under 33,000, and you get a larger portion of your value removed for tax purposes. So those are some new updates that I wanted to give everybody this year to start with, because that senior program is a big change for us. We want to get that word out there. I know the state is going to do some advertising here real soon about that new program change, but like I said, I've tried to, it's on our website. I try to let people know when they come in to update, because we're going through audits all the time with the seniors when they're coming in, that the next year, if they didn't qualify this year in the past, they may qualify for the following year. So that's a really good change that's happened for the seniors. I think probably, you know, if I'd need to see what people are most interested in. So if we have some questions, I'd be more than happy to address any of those. Those big changes are the ones I wanted to make sure that you had some updates about.
No, we appreciate that very much, and can get the word out. I was actually fortunately not just fortuitously, I guess, was at the Squint Chamber meeting yesterday, where Todd Milkey made his presentation on the budget. And we actually did talk a little bit about the assessor's office and how all of the taxes work. My understanding from that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that I shouldn't say our taxes cannot go up by more than 1% every year. So even if the property is assessed at a higher value, that only 1% per year can be collected. Does that sound right?
Not completely.
Okay.
What that 1%, it doesn't affect individuals. So your taxes can adjust differently depending on how much your property value went up or how much exemptions have been put into your area that shifted taxes. What happens with the 1% is coming up in the next couple months here, all of your taxing districts, your libraries, your hospitals, fire districts, all of them will be having public meetings to pass their budgets to run their districts. And what happens with that is after they do all the resolutions and the passing of the budgets, they tell me how much money they need to run their district. They are the ones that are limited to increasing their amount of money that it costs to run the district to the 1% from over what last year is. So when they send me their request on how much money it's going to cost to run that district, I run a bunch of calculations to make sure they stay within other guidelines also. But the 1% is the maximum they can raise the amount of money to be collected for that district. There's a couple of caveats to go with that. There is an additional amount can be raised because of new construction in that area to cover new services. And then also there's a small amount, the state has state assessed properties that they actually value that are properties that cross county lines. So if there's an increase in that, that's also an allowable increase a little bit in the calculation process. So the 1% is actually limited to how much your districts can ask for over and above what they got last year without going to the vote of the people. Does that answer that a little bit? Yeah, it's not
It really
directly,
does. It does help clarify. And Lori has a question. And Lori, just before I read that for Pam, I just wanted to follow up on mine a little bit more to clarify, because my understanding, again, when Todd was saying it, is that uh, property owners will their bills can go up more than somebody else's, even though it's capped at whatever that percentage is. So I was wondering if that's true, that somebody's, does that, maybe I'm not asking that question well enough, but that our homes might not be as, they might go up, but that we might not have the same increase in taxes.
absolutely. What happens with those is when they give me those budgets, I calculate a levy rate based off of the value of that district. And then that's dispersed, that levy rate's dispersed amongst all the taxpayers. So if everybody's property went up 10%, it wouldn't change a whole lot, but that's not the way the market usually works. So say your house went up 100%. Say you did a bunch of new construction, you doubled your square footage, whatever changes happened, or market itself took place. If yours went up more than your neighbors did, then your portion of that tax bill would be a little higher. That 1% is really only on what your districts are asking to run that specific district. And then we calculate a levy rate based off of that information and the value of that district's area, and we come up with a levy rate. And that levy rate is applied to everybody's values. So the value changing, if everybody changed equally, it wouldn't make a lot of difference. But that's not the way the market works. Your neighbor did some updating and their house is now, not depreciated quite as much as the other neighbors. So yes, those changes can happen and you could end up paying a different tax bill. So because Washington State is a budget-driven system, we take the amount of money that's needed to run those districts and divide it amongst all the value in the district. Where some states are rate-driven systems, and those rates, if they increase that rate, everybody's going to pay more. And in ours, with the budget-driven system, that limitation of 1% is only for their budgets.
Thank
So
you.
does that
That's
answer
really
question?
helpful.
Okay,
Absolutely.
good.
And Lori, I'm going to read your question to Pam. I don't think or would you like to, Lori? Or do you want me to go ahead?
You can go ahead.
Thanks, Lori. Okay, so Lori asked Pam, the value of my property was reassessed last year from 286,000 to 439,000. I went and asked your office about this and was told it was so large because it's a short-term rental. But short-term rentals are not allowed in my zoning, so I don't understand how this could be a factor used for assessing my property.
A short-term rental normally we treat just like any residential. I would have to look at that individual's situation, but the short-term rental, the only difference between something like that and a residential is we could use an income approach to that value also. There's 3 approaches to value, the income approach, the market approach, and the cost approach. And we use all 3 when we can. The income approach doesn't usually apply to residential properties, but it's also a form for rental information. So we could look at that as a third option. We always use the cost approach and the market approach. I would say if it went up that much, it had to do with market or improvements that you possibly made. But Lori, I'd have to look at the individual property, and I'd be more than happy to do that for you. But short-term rentals usually are the exact same as residential, unless you want us to use that third approach. Does that help that question?
Lori, do you want to clarify more?
No, I guess I don't need to clarify. That's what your office told me. So.
And like I said, that may be because you were using that third approach to value to test our value.
How can they use that third approach to value when a short-term rental isn't allowed in my zoning?
Well, are you renting it? It doesn't really matter if it's short-term or long-term. If it's a rental period.
It's my primary residence. Okay,
so
never mind. Never mind. It doesn't matter. You guys won't change it. So
Well,
Okay,
if we've made a mistake, Lori, we will change it. I don't know that there's a mistake made. Is the house worth what we're saying it's worth? Hello?
I have no idea. I have not tried to put it up for sale. It's just a city lot. So it's a 1,000 square feet city lot. So, or it's a
But
thousand
if you
square
want
foot,
to
a
discuss it
1,000 square foot home. So seems crazy
further,
to me, but
if you want to discuss it further, come in and see me. We can look at it. I'd be more than happy to go over the information with you. I'm here all the time. I'm not here on Fridays usually. I'm usually in Forks on Friday, but I'd be more than happy to look at it with you if you want me to.
thanks, Pam. That's,
Okay.
it's one of the benefits, I think, of us living in this small community. Certainly having our officials accessible. Really appreciate that. Okay, so I noticed a question also from Colleen Robinson. Colleen, do you want to ask your question?
I do. Good morning. So Habitat has a property, and right next to it is a what I would call a blighted property. There was a house fire in June. The house is uninhabitable. When we look on the county site to see the value, it's not updated that the house is no longer inhabitable. It's still showing as it was before the fire in June of 2023. So my question is, when is that updated? How do you find out? How do you know that there was a house fire and the property is no longer livable? What is the process around that?
There is a process for the destroyed property. You know, if we find it and notice that that's happened, we'll go ahead and start the process for the destroyed property application. Otherwise, you know, we don't always know about these things. If there's a fire or a natural disaster of some sort, you know, the wind blew off your roof, something, if you'll come into our office, there's a form, and it's online too, for a destroyed property to tell us what happened and when it happened, and we'll make adjustments to the value for whatever reason. I just actually did one yesterday, and I initiated it because the gentleman came in and has lots of problems with the house, and I got lots of reports back and all the things to verify these things. And I initiated the destroyed property. But normally it's up to the taxpayer to initiate that because we don't always know about it. If we do physical inspections once every 6 years, unless there's a reason to go out to the property, like a new construction, some kind of discovery that we need to be aware of. But we're on a schedule to physically inspect once every 6 years. So it could be 6 years before we find something like that. And in a lot of cases,
So to
with
follow
something
up,
like that,
to follow
me.
up, Pam, we don't own the property. It is impacting the property that we own because it's a blighted nuisance property. And so I can't apply for the destroyed property if it's not my property, right?
No, do you know who owns it? Do you know the owners?
I do, and they
Okay.
are not cooperative.
Well, I would think they would want to take it off the tax roll so they don't have to pay taxes on it.
You would think.
If you want to come in and see me or call me separately, and I can initiate an appraiser to go out and look at it.
I'd appreciate it. Thank you. We'll do that.
Okay,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Like I said, if we have reason to go out, we will, but you know, we don't go out, we only see the properties once every 6 years unless there's new construction or a destroyed property or something like that. One of the things I did want to mention about destroyed properties is if it's a natural disaster like a fire or the wind, tree, something happens that is out of the owner's control, the destroyed property law allows us to prorate that as of the day of destruction. But if you remove something, say you tear down a barn or you know, tear part of your house off, whatever, if you remove it physically yourself and it's an intentional removal, the state looks at that, whereas if it's there of January 1st of the assessment year, you still pay taxes on it the tax year. So say if you were going to tear down a garage, if you don't tear it down by December 31st of the assessment year, it shows up on the tax rolls January 1st of the next assessment year, you'll be paying taxes on that the following tax year. So I always try to make people really clear about that, that if you're going to tear something down, make sure you tear it down by the end of the year, because you're going to end up paying taxes on it for an extra year. That's the way the state law reads. So I always encourage them to get it out of there before the end of the year and make sure they report it to us with some kind of evidence that it's gone.
Pam, can you drop your email in the chat, or maybe Lori or Rebecca could drop it in the chat?
Okay, I'm not on the chat because I'm not online.
I will
only
do
on the
that.
phone.
I will
Okay.
do that for you, Pam. And I also put the link in at the top of the chat for the senior exemption link for the program.
Thanks, Lori.
Thank you. And anything, the Board of Equalization link is also, they have online board petitions for people that want to file a board petition. Since we sent out notices on the 16th of October, they have till November 16th to file a board petition with, and you know, if they have an exception, they need to talk to the Board of Equalization about accepting late filings, but that's the date lines right now. There will be some exceptions to that because people will come in and give us information we were unaware of. So we make a correction, then we send out a new notice that activates that 30 days again. But just so you know, those are connections on either our website or the BOE, which is all Clallam County. So thank you for putting those out there, because that helps.
Sorry, can you talk a little bit about that process, just so people know what to expect?
The Board of Equalization?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So anytime you get a change of value of notice, or you have something that you want us to look at for your properties, but the change of value notice, you have 30 days after the change of value notice to file a Board of Equalization, and that's telling, you know, asking us to look at your property and saying that you either think we're too high or too low. So we take a more in-depth look at what you're talking about. Sometimes people supply information that we were unaware of. Just like I said yesterday, the one kid came in and had a bunch of problems with his house that we don't know that. We're doing outside inspections, and they're going pretty fast because we have a limited staff and a lot of properties to look at. So when we go out in the field, you know, we're looking at the exterior of the property. We don't see the interior. So those are things that sometimes people will bring information in. So when you file a Board of Equalization, you file a petition with that agency. We're not the Board of Equalization. That's a third agency outside of us, which is disinterested people from the community that don't have anything to do with my office. So you'll file with them, and you'll either tell them why you think we're wrong on our opinion of value. And usually they'll ask for, always, they ask for like comparable sales. So online, there's also sales information from our website. So you can look up sales around in your area if you want to, or similar areas. We are working with our MAP, GIS department, to try to get better information out there for sales information for you to look at too. So it's easier to look at on a map, but you can see them. You just have to go on individual properties. But they'll ask for those kind of things in the reason why you think our information is incorrect. And you do have to give them a reason. It can't just be that, you know, my assessment's higher than my neighbor's assessment, because you can't use other assessments. You have to use facts about sales information or property information. So they'll want to see that on the Board of Equalization. And then that process usually goes on for several months, because they'll have, depending on how many filings they get, they'll start scheduling those out, probably starting right after the first of the year. They'll start scheduling some of those board hearings. And those hearings are either on the phone or in person. There is 3 people on the board. There's one from each a district. So you'll have one from the West End, one from the central area, and then you'll have one from the East End. So those are appointed by the commissioners. They appoint this board as like I said, a third party, disinterested party, just to listen to the evidence. So you need to bring evidence in on why you think our value is incorrect, whether it's too high, too low, or there's issues with the house that we're unaware of. And I always tell people, you know, we only see exterior information. I have actually gone into homes where the whole ceiling was falling on the inside, and I wouldn't have known that by the outside. So we don't see those things, so we need to be told. So it's kind of upon the taxpayer to make sure that we have the best information available. But that's the process. You take it into them, they'll start the process on the hearing, and then they'll schedule you a hearing, and you'll get information from our office and from them. And after the hearing is over, whether they decide to adjust your value or leave it alone, you also have a second option to go to the Board of Tax Appeals if you don't agree with the decision from the Board of Equalization. So you can even move on to the Superior Court later at that. But you know, if there's something that we're unaware of and we need to fix it, usually just coming into our office can do that, because we'll call that a manifest error. It's information we were not aware of. But if it's a real disagreement on people don't think their value is there, we will show either how we came up with that value, comparable sales, information for the marketplace, why we've made adjustments the way we did. I actually get Board of Equalizations for both raising and lowering properties. I know when the market fell apart in 2008, I got a lot of Board of Equalizations wanting us to put it back to where it was because they were not being able to get the loans that they were looking for. So, because we did start lowering values when that market hit. So it goes both ways, up or down. But once we're there, we want to make the correction. I also had a phone call just recently from somebody that wanted to talk about an adjacent property that they had purchased in the whole purchase, and said that our value was considerably over what they paid for it. Well, investigating it, they had done a bunch of new construction since they bought it, and that was part of the reason their value had went way up. Well, once I have that information, I have to, you know, they didn't get building permits, so I had to put the new buildings on the property anyway. That upset them because once I know that information, I can't unknow it. I have to fix the property correctly. I mean, I would think everybody would want their information to be accurate. So it can go up or down depending on what needs, if we've made a mistake of some sort. And you know, we're human, we make mistakes too.
We sure do. Okay, well, thank you. So we've got a couple other questions. I think, Liz, I think your hand has been up the longest. Do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Yes, thank you. Good morning. I was just wondering if there is a change in around Agnew. I have 4.7 acres, 1/4 mile off of the Highway 101 north. And the property value went from 70,000 to 265,000. It just seemed kind of.
Was it a land-only property?
Yes.
Yeah, we did a lot of adjustments on land, and we're going to continue through the county. The land was pretty dormant for a long time as far as sales were going. It was mostly improved properties that were really active. So when we don't have a lot of activity on raw land or any particular kind of properties, you know, we're waiting to see if the trend is actual or if it's you know, just a sporadic thing that happens. So in land, because land was pretty dormant for a while there, we didn't make a lot of changes for several years. Well, land has been increasing pretty rapidly over the last 2 or 3 years. That land has taken off on sales, and the sales are astronomical. I have to actually physically go out and look sometimes to think, what the heck, did they put a house on that property? And no, it was just raw land. So the land sales were indicating that we needed to make some major changes, and you'll see that we're doing that. I think probably most of our calls from our valuation notices have been on those land increases. If you have questions about why they made it, don't hesitate to come in and talk to us. My land appraisers can give you the information that they use to make those adjustments. So yes, you will see a lot of land adjustments over the county in the next few years. We've been doing it for the last 3 years, but it takes a while to come through the county. Normally, what we do when we make adjustments to values every year, if we haven't physically inspected it, we're making a statistical analysis update on the sales. So I have a statistician that spends probably 9 months out of the year looking at numbers and sales and seeing where the market's going, where the market's been, how much of adjustments are needing to be made, and those are statistical updates. I didn't really want to do that with land because land has so many different issues with it. They need to look at it a little bit more to be accurate. And we're still gonna get caught up in not knowing, you know, if there's limitations to the building on the land. So we leave it up to the taxpayers to make sure that they let us know. We do our research the best we can, but nobody knows their property better than they do. So if there's issues, I encourage people to come and talk to my land appraisers and let them know what those issues are. We can attach it to that property and make sure that we try not to overvalue it or undervalue it in the future. But land, the market on the land has gone crazy. I've seen lots selling for, gosh, $200,000, and it just, I'm an old realtor. I was in the real estate business back in the 90s, and $200,000 for a house was a lot of money back then. So when I see a raw lot going for $250, it makes me think there's something there that we're unaware of. And we've made inspections, and it's just the raw land sales are just crazy. So we'll see how that goes in the future. Excuse me?
Is there a direct telephone line to your land assessors that you could put in the chat?
I
We
have
have to-
several of them.
Yeah, we have a
If you just-
general one in there, Pam.
Yeah, call the general one. They'll take your information and get you to the right appraiser depending on who did your area. So if you call the general one and they'll want to know your property identification number, and they can hook you up with the right appraisers. And I'm also willing to look at them too.
Thank you, Pam. I appreciate you taking the time to answer my question.
Perfect.
Sure.
And then we'll go to James in just a second. But Pam, I wanted to say that you are not an old realtor. You are a former realtor. So anyway.
Okay. Well, my gray hair makes me feel older.
James, do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Okay, yeah, I'm really glad to have this opportunity. So I was looking at taxes for talking to the city, and I have a lot. I don't have a lot. I have a small alley house, and if I look at my tax statement, it says my house is worth $37,000. That's probably correct. It's not much of an alley house. But then it goes improved non-home site value of 116,000. And then it turns around for land non-home site value of 55,000. So my tiny house, the lot is valued at $171,000. And if I go look at an empty lot that's just right next to it, it's taxed at 55,000. So I'm really trying to understand why I have this additional $116,000 improved non-home site value attached to my property.
Again, I would have to look at the individual one. The non-home site, the only difference for that is if you're have a senior exemption.
Well, it says improved non-home site value. And I've looked through, I've gone through different properties looking at this weird extra value that's attached to my particular house, and I don't understand where this type of value comes from. Not my particular one, but why you would say improved non-home site value to something that has a home on it.
Like I said, that's just kind of an internal information. The overall value of your lot is what the value is. We separate them. Is it over an acre?
No, it's 7,000 square foot.
The 7,000 square foot lot, has it got a water view?
No.
I think you should come in and see me.
All right, thank you.
I mean, without looking at it directly, I can't tell you what's going on. But the home site, the reason we have that internal information is because the program allows up to 1 acre to be allowed in the program. So if you have an additional 5 acres or something like that, that may not qualify to be in the program. So that's for us internally for the programs, and we put it on a lot of different properties in case they ever come in to apply. We can just automatically do that. They are allowed more acreage if the zoning allows it. That's another change that happened a few years ago in the program. But that's really kind of an internal information for us to apply the program. In your particular case, I think I need to look at your land.
Okay, and then do you just walk in, or do you need an appointment?
You can normally just walk in. My appraisers are not always in the office because they are in the field quite a bit of the time. If I'm here, I'm more than happy to. I go in the field too, so I'm more than happy to talk to you. If you want to call me first and just tell me you're coming, that's great. I can give you my direct line is 360 417-2228. So if you want to call me directly and come in and see me, that's great.
All right, hey, thanks.
Thanks,
Okay.
Pam. And before we get to Cindy, who I think is on deck, Rod Fleck was saying, so you're down in Forks Fridays?
Always, Rod. My grandkids live in Forks for one thing, and I stay out there Friday nights. But unless they come home with me.
That's what Karen Depew walked down and said, don't you know? And I'm like, oh. So yeah. If you ever need an
I'm in
office,
Forks
let us
Friday.
know.
And I stop by your office because actually I'll bring workloads out sometimes while they're in school
Yep.
on Friday, and I'll go do new construction and stuff. So yeah, I'm almost every Friday I'm in Forks. I can't get enough of those babies.
Okay, Cindy, do you want to go ahead?
Good morning, Pam. It's Cindy Kelly. I have a question
Hi.
regarding, how are you?
I'm good.
Good. Hey, I have a question about open space. Most of, some of us live in the country and some of our neighbors I don't know if it's still called open space, or they get, depending on what they're doing with their property. But I was told that the people that have open space affects the other people within that quarter section, their property values. Is that true or not true?
It doesn't necessarily affect the property value so much as what it does affect their taxes. Anytime that we are giving an exemption, whether it's an open space, agricultural, forestry, senior, tribal, government, nonprofit, anytime that there is an exemption given in the state of Washington, the amount of taxes that exempt entity used to pay gets dispersed amongst the rest of the taxpayers in that district. So it doesn't have anything to do with the quarter section either, unless that's the end of the district. So say you live in Fire District 4, which I think you do, right? I'm not sure if it's 2 or 4.
2. I'm in 2.
Okay, so you say you're in Fire District 2, and we exempted $100,000 worth of value from a piece of property because it's in a program or a senior, some reason we exempted it. That amount of taxes that was paid on that $100,000 now gets redistributed to the remaining taxpayers. So I think that's what they're indicating. Anytime in the state of Washington that there's an exemption given, the taxes don't go away. They just get redispersed amongst the remaining taxpayers that are paying taxes. Does that explain that?
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought.
Yeah, that's with any program, any exemption program. Anytime, a taxing district, like say the hospital buys property and it comes off the tax rolls, the amount of those taxes that they used to pay now gets shifted to the remaining taxpayers. And it works that way with any exemption in the state of Washington.
I know you and I have had the conversation regarding how much property is taken off. I mean, it'd be interesting to go back to 2000 and see how much property we were taxing in this county and then what we're taxing now, because I think people don't understand all these people are, like the hospital or, cities, school districts, fire districts. I mean, PUDs, the list goes on nonprofits. I just think that people don't understand why their taxes are going up because more property is being removed from the tax rolls.
That does have a portion of that issue. Anytime there's, like I said, there's an exemption, it gets shifted. Another thing with new construction with more services needed, they are allowed to increase their levy by a calculation on the increased values. So that's over and above that 1% that I talked about earlier. So if you have an area that has a lot of new construction, the levy rate will start to go up a little bit because of that, because there's more services needed to, there's more fire, more police. There's lots of more services to a developed area than there is a 40 acres that's undeveloped.
Thank you, Pam.
Does that answer that? You're welcome.
So we've got one question in the chat. Sharon Ann, do you want to ask it?
No, it was answered.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Jim Mac. Oh, sorry. Did you want to say something, Sharon Ann? Okay.
Nope.
Jim McIntyre.
Morning.
Hey, Jim.
Good morning.
Cindy's question reminded me I needed to ask you this particular question, and I appreciate your being on this morning to remind me to ask you this. I heard something many years ago, and I've been using this statistic ever since, but I don't know how how true it is or not true it is. I heard this, and I can't remember who I heard this from. Anyway, a long time ago, somebody said that 40% roughly of the real properties inside the city of Port Angeles are not taxable simply because they're government, tribal, nonprofit, so on and so forth. Does that ring true to you, or is there a way to dig into some data and analyze that on my own? Because that's an interesting statistic for the city of Port Angeles in particular. I don't know if that applies equally to Sequim and Forks, but
you know, I've never done the percentages, Jim. I've never done them personally. You would have to look at all of the property, because if you look at Clallam County in general, that sounds about right. Maybe even higher because we have the national park.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah.
So I've never done the numbers for individual jurisdictions. The jurisdiction themselves may have done that. Have you ever talked to the Port Angeles about that?
No, but I will do that.
Yeah, I've never done the numbers because to be honest with you, don't spend a lot of time on exempt properties because they're not affecting the taxpayers.
Yeah,
I mean, they do, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time valuing them because of the time constraints we have to get our jobs done.
Yep.
And spending a lot of time on an exempt property it doesn't affect the taxpayers. So I don't waste their time. I would rather them do a better job on the taxable properties.
Yeah.
So I don't spend a lot of time on that, Jim. I'll be honest with you.
That's fine. That answers the question. Cindy's point is an apt one, though, to the extent that a property tax levy in a fixed dollar amount is spread over 60% of the real properties versus 100% of the real properties. That really affects the individual property owner's tax bill. So
it absolutely does. Anytime there's an exemption, it does shift those taxes.
Yep.
One of the things I guess probably they look at too is the services are not as drastic to it, depending what the exemption's for.
Yep,
But
right.
they're probably not pulling as many services as like a residential development of some sort. But
Yep.
Again, you got to remember that's what your tax dollars are going for, is the services. I'm really not your tax lady. I don't have any money in my office, but we do calculate the levies, and that's based off of the information that's given to me. I mean, Jim, you know that because you were commissioner, but
Oh yeah, right.
we've had about the levy parts. So, and I don't know what Todd and Mark actually talked about the other day, but if you want us, anybody in my office for specialties to come to certain meetings to give updates, I'm always more than happy to be there myself or to send the specialist to my office to do it. Because we have several people that know the senior citizen program very, very well. I'll be honest with you, personal property is not my favorite, but I do have a personal property exempt specialist on staff too. It's a personal feeling on me with personal property. The state says I have to do it, so I have to do it.
Personal property is more trouble than it's worth, I'll tell you.
I have that same feeling in a lot of cases, and the amount of work that goes behind it is enormous.
Yeah, right.
I've had my discussions with the Department of Revenue too. Personal property taxes are not going away.
Nope.
I have some personal feelings on that.
Yep.
Well, I'm gonna pass along that offer to Carmen Geyer over at the PA Senior Center. I think that's terrific. I think just having opportunities like this to talk and ask questions and be more informed, I think it helps everybody. Lori
Absolutely.
Fazio. Sorry, go ahead,
Oh,
Pam.
I was just going to say, I did talk to Carmen earlier in the year and ask her if she'd like us to do a workshop over there. I've offered in the past with previous managers, and they haven't really all been that interested. But, sometimes seniors are a little embarrassed to come and ask for help. And there and available for them to help them stay in their homes. So, I'm more than, I've actually gone to people's houses to keep them on the program because they didn't, they think we're invading their privacy when we ask them for some of the information we ask for. And it is private, personal information. It's their income. And I understand that, but I have to see those things to qualify for them for these programs. So usually if I can get an opportunity to talk to them one-on-one, they'll understand the reasoning behind the need. But I'm always willing to have somebody come and do a presentation, maybe have a workshop, like I said, have them spend the day looking at the information that they bring in or letting people know what information that we need. The program's out there and it's available to keep the seniors in their homes. So I'm always willing to help with that.
That's terrific to know. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Lori, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. Thank you, Pam, once again for joining us on Coffee with Colleen chat and making it so interactive with everyone on the call. I have a two-part question for you this morning. The first part, I'll include them all together and then you can answer them separately. How does the county handle issues related to property fraud and identity theft, particularly in property transfers and title changes? And the second part of that, what are the measures that the county has in place to protect sensitive property assessment data and maintain the privacy of property owners?
So I'll take that second one first, because most everything in our office is open to the public records requests. There's very few confidential things. Income is one of them. So if for a senior, when they bring their income information into us, we do not share that. That is a confidential information and that is exempted from the public records request. The other one would be businesses' income. Like I said, there's 3 approaches to value and the income approach is one of them. So if businesses share their information with us, which we ask them to, so we can use that third approach, that is also confidential. Most everything else is open to the Public Records Act. So I tell people, you know, sometimes they'll call me and say, well, can you call me before you show up on my property? And that's almost impossible to do for, you know, 57,000 properties. But there's certain circumstances where we need to get by a gate or there's an elderly person there or something that we try very hard to accommodate their ask. If I take their phone number and put it into our file, that becomes open to the Public Records Act. So I always warn people that any information that you supply us with, it becomes part of your record, and everything pretty much except for income is open to that Public Records Act. Does that answer that second part of that question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, that first part of the question, we don't know when there's fraud going on. If there's a deed that comes through, we work it. If it's been recorded, it becomes part of the public records. We work them. We don't know in a lot of cases. I'll be really honest with you. In the past, I have made some phone calls because my suspicion was there might be some fraudulent activity going on. Some of the stuff that happens just makes me sick because it's usually taking advantage of seniors. You know, I've actually tracked down kids of seniors. I'll tell you right now, I got a $220,000 check made out to me personally yesterday because a senior got their valuation notice and sent me the check for their value. And it's a check to me personally, not to the assessor's office. So it always scares me and this happens at least once a year, sometimes up to 5 times a year that I get these. I also got a blank check. It always scares me when seniors will send me that kind of money, whether they have it truly or not in their account. But if they'll send that to me off of a notice that says, this is not a bill, this is your valuation notice, they'll send a check to almost anybody for anything. And those guys are really open to being taken advantage of. I try very hard to track down either a family member if I can. There really isn't a good agency to turn them over to, but a lot of times they need to have somebody help them with their financial information. So there's a lot of fraudulent activity that happens. Like I said, most of the time I don't know it's fraudulent, but I do try to make sure that if I see something, to give it to the right people or to call them. I've done home visits. I actually last year had a gal, and I'm not a doctor, but I could tell there was some memory things going on. My mother had dementia and Alzheimer's, so you see that lost look in their face. She also sent me a $400,000 check last year. And when I go to her house, you know, she invites me in like I'm her daughter. And I went, no, I don't think I need to come in. You know, I have my ID on. I said, but you shouldn't really invite people into your home, the people you don't know. And she says, oh, yeah, you're right. And I says, I'm here to talk to you about this check you sent me. And she said, oh, I don't think I should have done that. I said, no, you really shouldn't be sending checks like that. And I tried to see if she had any family or anything. She really didn't. I ended up talking to a best friend that promised me that they would keep an eye on her finances. Come to find out, this particular person did have the money in the bank. If I had cashed that check, it would have been good. And she tells me this, not knowing me very well. She just tells me how much money she's got. So they are so primed to be taken advantage of in a lot of cases. It scares me. And if you're aware of any agencies that I can call to get help on those, I would love to know about it. We've called around some agencies, but some of these seniors specifically need to be helped a little bit. My mom lived with me for 15 years, so I know what can happen. It's really hard to undo these fraudulent things that happen, or these people out there taking advantage of them. But for the most case, we don't know about it unless something drastic happens, or I just have the hair on the back of my neck stands up and I think something's going on. I'm very limited in what I can do.
Wow.
Thank you, Pam.
I cannot think of a nicer note to end this morning on, just knowing the care you're taking of people. My dad's 91, mom's in her mid 80s, and I get the struggle, and it's I don't know, just it really means a lot that you take that kind of care with our community. So with
It's
that,
scary.
it is
Thank
scary.
Can,
I get
can,
it.
can I just make a
Sure.
quick suggestion to Pam? Pam, you may want to give the Attorney General's office a call. The AG has a consumer protection division. They may know, if they're not the right agency or entity to understand fraud or potential fraud, they can tell you better who locally to contact. So that's an idea for you.
The problem with that is it's not necessarily a fraud. I'm trying to protect them from a fraudulent activity.
Yeah,
If like I said, they'll send me a check for that amount of money. I actually had a gal call me one time and want to give me her credit card number over the phone. Said she'd gotten a bill from me. She had accidentally put one of those people that want to charge you for the sewer from your house to the road. Those, they're scams. Anyway, she had put that note in my envelope and was calling me to give me the credit card number. So, if they'll do that, they'll give that credit card number to anybody on the phone. That's what scares me. I mean, my mom did it. That's the reason I know these things will happen. And I don't think the attorney's consumer protection can help me with that. If I actually see something fraudulent going on, I could call them. But I would love to have senior protection agency or something out there.
I know.
To help. Because some of them don't have kids. They don't have anybody in their life.
I know, exactly. The only other idea that might work is the Olympic Area Agency on Aging.
That's the one we do contact once in a while.
Do you talk to them? Okay. Yep.
Yeah, we do sometimes. They have their hands are limited too. It just seems like there should be something out there to make sure that this. We've tossed our aging people to the side in some cases, I think.
Yeah. I hear you. That was my wife's social work career was largely focused on adult protective services, and she can tell you all sorts of horror stories. So
I know it's awful out there, and I wish I could just have a number to say, can you do a wellness check on these people or something to help them out? But
I completely
we
understand.
are limited our abilities, but it's sad. So if you see somebody struggling, please try to help them.
Thanks, Pam.
Again, just a lovely note to end on. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Pam, it was lovely having all those questions answered, and we will hopefully see everybody back here next week on Wednesday, Coffee with Colleen. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'll anytime, if I got information you're looking for, give me a call or stop by and see me.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Perfect.
Pam.
Thanks, Pam.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
All right, Lori, I think we made it through. I'm gonna
Yeah,
give you a,
I think you just have to click stop recording.
Yep.
Do you, there you
oh,
go.
yeah, I should have thanked Lena for doing that. Will it stop? It'll probably stop automatically, right? If I just end the meeting.
Good. Yeah, we could try it.
Let me stop recording. Yay.